questions, but I can speak briefly if that's helpful.
All right. Anyone else? Candace, go ahead, you go. All right. We are going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling this hearing to order. For the record, my name is Kendra Lara, District 6 City Councilor, and I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Housing and Community Development. I am joined this afternoon by my colleagues, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson of District 7 and at-large City Councilor Ruvzi Louijen. This hearing is being recorded. It is being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Today's hearing is on docket number 0375, an order for a hearing to explore a rent-to-own pilot program. This matter was sponsored by Councilor Fernandez-Anderson and is referred to the Committee on Housing and Community Development on March 9th, 2022. We'll be taking public testimony at the end of this hearing. If you are here with us in the chamber, please make sure to sign up on the sheet near the chamber entrance. And for all testimony, please state your name, neighborhood, or affiliation, and we will keep the testimony comments to 2 minutes. Joining us today from the Mayor's administration, we have Joel Wool, who's the Chief of Staff, Chief Procurement Officer of the Boston Housing Authority, Christine McCrory, the Director at the Boston Home Center, and Jessica Boatwright, the Deputy Director for Neighborhood Housing Development. Also joining us today is Josh Zaikum, former Boston City Councilor and the Executive Director of Housing Forward Massachusetts. Mr. Zaikum is also the former Chair of the Housing Committee. Before turning the floor to our panels, I'd like to acknowledge the docket's sponsor, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, for her opening remarks. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We literally was just talking about this.
You're also 5 feet tall, so
There you go. Is that a short joke?
Yep.
Good afternoon. Councilor Anderson, thank you so much for being here with us and agreeing to have this conversation about rent-to-own or possibility to rent-to-own. As many of you know about the, just throughout Boston, how it has outpaced wage inflation and government rental assistance for decades and has disproportionately impacted the low-income residents here in Boston. For that, I think, with some research, I think there are a couple of programs out there for rent-to-own, one outside of Massachusetts and one in. I think there's a lot to talk about and explore in terms of how we could possibly, ideally, do it better here in Boston. Thank you. And I look forward to a conversation. I'm hoping that we can all give our insight in terms of what the possibilities are. And I look forward to, again, learning from you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson. I would like to acknowledge at this time that we've been joined by City Council President Ed Flynn, District 2. Welcome, President Flynn. And I would like now to give the floor to Councilor Louijen for opening remarks. Councilor Louijen, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll keep my remarks brief. I want to thank Councilor Fernandez-Anderson for offering this hearing order to take a look at what it would look like to really introduce rent-to-own here in our market, given that it is there's such a barrier for so many families who want to own here in the city. And if we work with, organizations that have a long track record of working with state and local governments like TRIO, like organizations that have been doing this a long time, there's potential here for us to reduce the barriers to homeownership and helping folks build wealth in a way that is both responsive to the policy harms that we've done historically that have prevented families, especially Black and brown families, from being able to build wealth through homeownership. So I'm looking forward to learning from all of you and want to thank again the councilor for proposing this hearing order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Louijen. President Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Laura, and thank you for your important work as the chair. And I want to say thank you to both of our colleagues, Councilor Louijen and Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, as well, for their leadership and their important work. And want to acknowledge the administration team that's here. And I also want to acknowledge my former colleague, Councilor Josh Zaikum, who was an excellent colleague and had a tremendous opportunity to learn from Josh on many issues, including affordable housing issues. And just want to say thank you to the team that's here for representing the city well in providing opportunities for residents with the opportunity, hopefully, to own their own home. That's certainly the American dream. I don't have any further comments. Thank you, Councilor Lara.
Thank you, President Flynn. And so I will also keep my remarks short as the chair of the Housing Committee and also as a former housing justice organizer. Before I got on the council, one of the things that's incredibly important to me is rent control. And to me, having a mortgage and home ownership is one form of rent control that I think could be incredibly effective in stabilizing our communities. And so any pathway that we can create towards home ownership is good for me, and I'm very excited about. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson gave her maiden speech about this issue specifically, and so I'm really happy to be stewarding this conversation on the City Council. So I'm going to turn the floor to our panel now, and I am going to start with Miss Christine McCrory. Miss or Mrs.? Yes. Miss Christine McCrory. Miss McCrory, you have the floor. Now, do you have a presentation as well? No. Beautiful.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Christine McCrory, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Boston Home Center's Home Buyer Programs. We currently do not have any rent-to-own programs, but here today to listen and to take the issue and suggestions back to the working group, which is scheduled to meet in early September to explore such programs in Boston. Though we do not have rent-to-own programs in place, we do offer assistance and opportunities for Boston residents to help them become homeowners. With over 27 years of experience with education and counseling, the Boston Home Center seeks to strengthen Boston neighborhoods through homebuyer education classes, seminars, counselings, so first-time homebuyers understand the home buying process and have access to sound, affordable, and sustainable mortgage products, the foundation of successful long-term home ownership. The Boston Home Center also offers programs and services to help Boston homeowners retain and maintain their homes. Our down payment and closing cost assistance programs and our participating lenders work with first-time homebuyers to get them into affordable and sustainable mortgage products designed for first-time homebuyers like the MHP 1 and the 1 Plus and mass housing loans. The mission of the Boston Home Center is to help Bostons become and remain successful homeowners. The Boston Home Center operates several programs with a goal of increasing home ownerships in the city of Boston for low and moderate income households and BIPOC households. The programs that the BHC offers can be broken down into three categories: financial aid programs, assisting buyers with technical assistance to buy affordable developed homes, including resales, and education and counseling services. The Mayor's Office of Housing provides funding for 50 home buyer classes per year, and last year there were 2,216 graduates, 63% of whom were BIPOC households. This past year, we also started a credit boot camp program with Urban Edge, and so far to help people improve their credit score so they would better be prepared to purchase a home. So far, we have enrolled 91 participants in this program who are working on increasing their credit score. We also help first-time home buyers purchase a new home through our Affordable Housing Lottery program, the Neighborhood Homes Initiative, as well as through resale of affordable units. In fiscal year 22, we assisted 27 buyers to purchase their home through the Neighborhood Homes Initiative. 90% of these buyers were BIPOC households, and 88% of them had incomes less than 80% AMI. Among these, 22% of them had incomes less than 60% AMI. These units were located in Jamaica Plain, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Alston, Brighton. In addition, we assist owners of deed-restricted properties sell their units and certified buyers for deed-restricted resales. In fiscal year 22, we certified 24 resale units. Again, 50% of these buyers were BIPOC households, and 91% of them had incomes of less than 80% AMI. Lastly, and most importantly, the BHC provides financial assistance to home buyers through our financial assistance programs. We currently have 3 such programs for home purchases. the One Plus Boston program, which is a zero-interest deferred loan for Boston residents, for those working in Boston, or for those who have previously lived in Boston within the past 2 years, but who have been displaced due to high rents. This loan is due upon sale, refinance, or transfer of the property, but with this program, participants can receive up to $50,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance, in addition to an interest rate subsidy. This is based on need. The One Plus program is for households with incomes less than 100% of area median income. There is an interest rate subsidy of 1% for buyers under 80% and 0.5% for buyers between 81 and 100% of median income. We also have a financial assistance for non-One Plus mortgages. Again, it's a zero interest deferred loan for those buying in Boston with household incomes less than 135% of area median income. Eligible buyers can receive down payment and closing costs based on need and based on property type. So for a single family home, they could receive up to $30,000. For a condo, for a single and a condo, for a two-family up to $35,000, and for a three-family up to $40,000. Our final program is the Alston Brighton Homeownership Fund. This, again, is a zero-interest deferred loan for those buying in Alston Brighton, and its maximum income up to 135% of area median incomes. Buyers can receive up to $50,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance. In fiscal year 22, we helped 157 buyers through these programs. Buyers received on average about $19,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance. 63% of these households were BIPOC households, and 53% of them had incomes of less than 80% area median income. One final program that we also are working in partnership with Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance is the First Gen's Stash program, where we provide funding to to help first-generation home buyers and help expand the availability of this for home buyer for these residents. We provide MAHA with funding to give first-gen buyers a 2-to-1 match of up to $5,000 that they can use towards purchasing a home. So far, 21 participants in Boston have taken advantage of this program and have purchased a home in Boston. The programs offered by the Boston Home Center can help low, moderate buyers overcome many of the barriers of home ownership, such as down payment and closing costs. But we acknowledge there are still some barriers, and we're very interested in listening to this rent-to-own discussion and finding out what else we could do to help overcome these barriers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. McCrory. Before I turn the floor over to our next panelist, I would just like to acknowledge that we've been joined by my council colleague, Councilor Frank Baker from District 3. Councilor Baker, do you have any opening remarks that you would like to share?
No, I'm just here listening.
Beautiful. And I will now turn the floor to our next panelist, Joel Wu. Mr. Wu, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Start then. Good afternoon, members of the council, and thank you for the invitation. For the record, my name is Joel Wu. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Boston Housing Authority. I do have the pleasure of working with many of you quite frequently, and it's always good to be back in this chamber. And I want to thank my colleagues at the Mayor's Office of Housing at the Home Center for their collaboration, particularly as the BHA works to implement and accelerate some of our efforts on home ownership. And thank you also to the council for, I think, supporting and investing in some of those ideas in the most recently enacted budget. We're eagerly moving forward on some of those ideas. In fact, our internal staff meeting on that is now, which I am loath to miss, but happy to be here to talk about this pilot and concept. I wanted to, I think, offer briefly just a little bit of perspective of what we do. And I know that many of you work very closely with the BHA, with BHA program participants of various kinds. But generally speaking, you know, we certainly have the physical plant infrastructure, public housing, and we provide rental vouchers both throughout the city of Boston and across eastern Massachusetts. Across our programs, the subsidy is designed to keep the tenant's rent burden at 30% of their income. In various scenarios, we are a property owner and manager. We're channeling subsidy. We are, owning land that could be developed. We're thinking about how to use and redevelop land. And in some cases, we have financial empowerment or partnerships with nonprofits or other public agencies that help people build assets, build wealth, or get to a place where they are closer to becoming a homeowner or achieving their goals. I mention these things because as I was thinking about the idea that Councilor Anderson, the sponsor, has put forward, there's a number of different pieces of the puzzle, right? Who's owning, if the city opted to move forward with some version of this pilot, who is the owner of the land, who's the owner of the property? Is there subsidy going to the tenant, and at what point are they becoming an owner, and a lot of other parameters to figure out. As I noted from the BHA's kind of current operations, we do certainly provide various kinds of public assistance as well as sort of capacity building, but a lot of it is tied around keeping the cost burden to a percentage of income that would be consistent with not having someone be what the federal government would call cost burdened. So when I think about programming where a tenant is paying their rent or paying a contribution and becoming an owner over time, my mind mainly goes to, in addition to who owns what and how are the different parties connected, it's also for the household, how do we keep the overall cost burden on them down so that it's something that they can sustain over time and they're set up for success. That's not a caution, it's more of just a how do we arrange things to make that happen. That's most of what I wanted to float just in these initial comments here. As I noted, we're eagerly moving forward on the existing investments the mayor and council have collectively made. We'll be excited to, I think, collectively with the Home Center, have some updates on that very soon. We're expanding staffing in this area and trying to be creative, and we're looking at what we can do with some of our scattered site portfolio to make more home ownership opportunities while also creating and preserving income restricted rental units. With that, I will conclude for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Ms. Boatwright, I know that you said that you were here to answer questions. Would you like to share some remarks?
Yeah, quickly.
You have the floor. Once it
All right.
becomes solid, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Boatwright. I'm the Deputy Director for Neighborhood Housing Development in the Mayor's Office of Housing, and it has been great to work with all of you on different projects, both this year and over the years. And I just wanted to represent that I'm here to sort of represent the other side of the coin. Christine's work at the Boston Home Center and the work of the Neighborhood Housing Development team are really paired in terms of the Boston Home Center focusing on helping individual buyers and the Neighborhood Housing Development Division working on producing units, some of those units being the units that those individual buyers are looking at. So the city has consistently funded home ownership projects for a long time now, and we currently have over 300 units that have received city funds and are in pre-development to get built, and a number behind them. And just here, I'm really excited to talk about this idea and to listen, and like my colleagues, to take information back, hopefully bring some back after that, and share our perspective from the development side. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Boatwright. And I would like to pass it on to our next panelist, Mr. Josh Zaikum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Josh Zaikum. I am currently the Executive Director of Housing Forward Massachusetts, and one of the focus, Housing Forward is an organization that's looking to address the housing affordability crisis across the state. Quite a small task, I guess, but part of what we do, and one of our focuses also, is looking at administrative or regulatory reforms that can make it easier to produce more housing of all types that don't require going up to Beacon Hill and asking for permission. So I'll just preface my comments with that, is that I think there's a lot that cities and towns, in particular the city of Boston, can do to advance housing affordability in the long term. I want to thank the sponsor, Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, for the invitation to appear here for your work on this, and just share a little bit about my thoughts and what our organization has looked into when it comes to rent-to-own or affordable home ownership generally, as well as obviously answer any questions from the panel, and hopefully work with you all and the fine folks at the city who some of my suggestions may lead to more work for them, but you know, that sometimes happens. So number one, home ownership, and Madam Chair, I think you mentioned this in particular, is, in your opening remarks, is really the ultimate anti-displacement strategy for a city, a community, a neighborhood. And there are a host of other benefits to home ownership as well. But in a city like Boston, where we are and have been facing a crisis of displacement, of lack of affordability, of lack of housing supply, which the sponsor called out in the hearing order in particular, is really critical to allowing folks to put down roots, to stay here in our community. And there's a few tensions here. I think there's often the discussion of how do we make the most, the largest number of affordable units? How do we ensure that they are affordable for the long term or in perpetuity, versus the tension of home ownership being one of the best ways to build wealth in this country, never mind the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it is a challenge, but I don't think it's an insurmountable challenge. I think these can exist together if we get creative. So I'm going to give some broad suggestions that I've thought about, that I've looked at with our research team at Housing Forward. Number one, when we're talking about affordable home ownership, the city does a great job in partnership with the state on down payment assistance, first-time home buyer programs. That's all great. If we're talking about this in the long term, one idea that I often talk about is creating a revolving fund using city funds, capital funds. I was joking earlier with Mr. Wool about ARPA funds being available, which I know is the go-to in public policy discussions these days. We think it never ends. But seeding a revolving fund where with the city, whether it's the Mayor's Office of Housing, whether it's BHA or some other entity that would purchase properties on the open market, it's not going to be cheap, but then resell them down the road. And there is a smaller version of this, I believe the Alston Brighton CDC has been doing for years. And depending on the amount of funding, and I think the way it's operated, a revolving fund like that can exist and in some ways replenish itself, may require additional appropriation over time. But I think it's a really great way to do that. And because if you're using city funds, you're not going to necessarily have some of the same limitations, requirements on who can be assisted, and the amount that can be given into it, as we're talking about, with HUD, Section 8, other programs that have requirements, which are outstanding programs, but are maybe not as flexible as one that we could create on our own. The city could target it to different neighborhoods based on risk of displacement. That's something else Housing Forward has recently been working on, and while we don't have it fully ready for distribution, we have been working on sort of a risk-based geographic anti-displacement strategy that we do look forward to sharing probably with many of you in this room in the coming months. And again, going back to my earlier comment, this is something that could be done through the city. This doesn't require state or federal approval, although their funds would certainly be welcome. But I think that's one of the best ways that we could go about doing this. Could be the cleanest. I know in this very chamber, I believe Councilor Louis-Jean, it was your hearing talking about tools that the city had, and I did talk about this, and I know some folks at the CFO's office probably didn't like it, but about the city sort of backstopping and using our outstanding credit rating to help folks, as mortgage borrowers, purchase homes. So there's a lot of different ways to do it without necessarily saying that the city is going to purchase homes or have city-owned property that folks will rent, and sort of, the classic rent-to-own where a portion of your rent goes to the ultimate down payment or purchase price. That's certainly one avenue, but there are also other ways that the city could do this that could create long-term home ownership, affordable home ownership, but also allow people to participate in that rising home equity, in that wealth building that really has been lacking, certainly not just in the city of Boston, but in the city of Boston over time. So I'll stop there for now. I'm happy to discuss a little further any of those or if I've missed something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zaikum. I'm now going to begin the first round of questions, and I'm going to start with the docket sponsor, Councilor Fernandez Anderson. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the panelists and your input and also updating us on what you've been working on. It sounds really exciting, a robust plan to fight anti-displacement, but also gentrification, and the programs that you have listed really outlines possibilities for different people to benefit from these programs. And I'm very happy to hear about them. They are very thoughtful. It sounds like a lot that the city is doing. So I'm appreciative of that. I think that, one of my thoughts in coming into or filing this was that, as Mr. Wool and Council Zaikum mentioned, it's really on how creative we want to get, right? So yes, there's amazing ideas already into play. So I'm wondering, in terms of data, what specific or how we can aggregate information from the Mayor's Office of Housing, if we can actually, and if you don't have the answers here today, that's okay. If we can actually look at data to show us are we prioritizing local residents in the town where the development is being built. And I think, in looking at what Mrs. Zaikum was saying in terms of building in towns and also prioritizing, local residents and looking specifically where people have been displaced and targeting those areas, I think that data would be super important. So the two things, can we legally prioritize residents or local residents in that town where the impact is happening or the development is going? And also, can we also prioritize by demographics? So can we actually say, because Black people are the most displaced, can we prioritize them when we actually build affordable?
So we do have priority, like through the Neighborhood Homes Initiative for Boston residents. So some of our programs do have preferences for Boston residents. Because of fair housing laws, which might be something you might have to talk about the Fair Housing Commission with, we generally are not able to do more localized preferences. And I think the same would be true with demographics. So I'm not sure how we get around that. Truthfully, but that is not something we are doing. There are preferences, as I said, it's Boston residency preference for like the affordable housing properties that we develop through the Neighborhood Homes Initiative. They're first offered to Boston residents. That's the highest priority. But beyond that, that's probably the only preference we have that would be kind of a local preference right now for our programs.
I guess that leads me to, I know that the Mayor's Office of Housing collects information or data on these things. If through the chair, if I'm allowed, if I can get information on specifically where are people coming from when we house people in new development, in affordable units, and specifically their demographics as well.
To be clear, that's a request for basically the recipients of the IDP units, of the people who get into the inclusionary development units and the demographic.
Excuse me, I don't market those, so I would only have the information on the ones that we market at D&D, which would be the Neighborhood Homes Initiative properties. That other information would probably have to come from the BPDA and their marketing agents.
So I think the request for the BPDA would be an off request. I think the Councilor Fernandez Anderson is requesting what you have for your organization as well here. Yeah.
And can I just clarify that we're doing this on homeownership units? And I wasn't sure from your question, so I want to bring you as much data as we can.
Yes, on both. Thank you
Okay.
for that question.
Okay.
Affordable rental as well as affordable homeownership. I think there's a lot of argument about, as long as we're building affordable rental, we're housing folks, we are combating this thing. When we continue to build affordable and already condensely populated areas, we are then further perpetuating an impoverished community with more. My opinion is of that we should spread it out throughout Boston, that one neighborhood shouldn't bear the brunt of housing all of the homeless.
and it should be spread out through Boston. And so I think understanding that when you build in a certain area, and as the chair mentioned, and there are IDP opportunities, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people in that area where the development is being built is going to benefit. And so how do we do that responsibly is, I think, looking at the information, the data, and saying, where's the need so that we can actually tactfully do what Mr. Zaikum is proposing, looking at the areas where the need is the most
Yeah.
for programs such as a pilot like this.
No, that's why I wanted to make sure that we brought all the information. And I will say, because this often comes up in neighborhood planning processes and in neighborhood discussions about individual projects of, can we prioritize a specific neighborhood for, for the lotteries, for the reasons that, some of the reasons that you're talking about. And so we do defer to Fair Housing Commission, because we want to be sure that, that we're following all the regulations, but we have done some research over time, and colleagues have done that, and I can try to pull some of that together as well.
Please, thank you. Yeah, would you like to answer the question?
I just briefly on the sort of the preferences issue, and obviously fair housing law applies to everyone, but something that in my experience, both when I worked here and since, is that on marketing and outreach in a way that certainly anyone may apply and anyone could, but making sure you're marketing in the geographies, in the areas that are served by folks who are being most impacted, whether it's an explicit preference or not. I often think about the Pride at the Hyde senior affordable housing development that we had a hearing on when I did chair this committee many years ago. And what they often talked about was just by marketing that facility as sort of LGBTQ friendly, they achieved their goal without running afoul of fair housing issues. And I think that's important to think about where you're targeting the marketing for opportunities. But there's a real opportunity here, as the sponsor was saying, to make sure that we're investing in communities that need it and making sure that we are spreading the affordable home ownership and rental opportunities around the city. You look at a map of rental increases, of displacement rates, and it is not the same across the city of Boston. I think it's something we've seen and talked about a lot, but something that with some thoughtfulness and hard work we could make a real impact on.
Nice, thank you. Madam Chair, do I have one more question? Please. Joel, thank you so much for being here. As always, appreciate our back and forth. I want you to tell me a little bit more about what you meant in terms of, who owns it, or who's managing it, or when does it take place? Can you tell me a little bit more about what you foresee as an issue for a pilot program like this?
Yeah, thank you, Counselor, and I'm happy to. And again, it's a little bit speculative, but in that the BHA is a landlord and a provider of subsidy, and sometimes we are channeling subsidy to other landlords, right? And any other kind of combination of. Sometimes we just own the land. I think. I really was just trying to imagine in my mind, and I'm going to start there. When we're going to have so let's say we have a development, and it's a rent, whether it's a triple decker or whether it's 10 stories tall and it's rent to own, literally who owns the land, who owns the building, who provided the money to make the purchase, and which of those are public agencies? And the reason, I think depending on how it's set up, you run into certainly different financial arrangements and constraints, but on the public side, certain public purchasing and public subsidy rules. So I think that is a key piece to tease out as we go through different models that may involve, presumably in what you're talking about, some level of city or BHA or public assistance of some kind, but also ultimately looking at a private individual or household coming into ownership. And I think, at least from the BHA side, I think this is probably shared that, we generally want to set up people well, so there may be nonprofit entities who, whether or not they're owning the building, may be coming in as partners on the homebuyer education or financial counseling side of it as well. So if I can more succinctly and directly answer your question, what I think is it might be valuable to sort of sketch out just a couple of different scenarios of literally like who owns it, how much is, what's required, maybe at what point does the ownership transition from renter to owner, and what is if a tenant or a household makes so much money, what does that look like for them on a month-to-month basis, and try to run that through a couple of different scenarios. And that's in my mind how we see sort of what works and what doesn't. I'm not coming with an answer on that one. I just, from the various roles that we play in trying to, provide housing assistance or maintain housing, it's what came to mind immediately in sort of thinking about this. So.
Thank you. So I really appreciate what you said, Mr. Zaikum, about, exploring other ways, right, with the other hearing, which the lead co-sponsor, Councilor Lujan, brought us together to talk about, looking into our credit and seeing how we can use funds in that way. And also linkage funds, right? So there's other developments that are going up, and we could use, and I think to the discretion of the mayor, obviously a collaboration, hopefully, that we allocate certain funds from developments to go to a specific project that is decided on. And I'm thinking about the possibilities of looking at, okay, let's at least try something, right? And I really appreciate what you said about if the city owns it outright, then obviously cost reduction. If we're condoizing this so that we're renting it first, or if we're condoizing it, then association fees and tax and other things that can come about that. I looked into a program called Divvy. Have you heard of this program? And what they do is they own it outright. They'll purchase the home of your choice, and you're sort of getting certified or pre-qualified, beforehand, and it doesn't impact your credit. They're using your rental history and other means of credit, or to at least establish credit that you are someone that's able to pay. But then they're also working with you in terms of the finance literacy or savings. And so while you're paying rent, they have a program that is helping you save towards the down payment. And then they're also, once you're ready to transition, of course there's someone to walk you to cross over, that you transition from rent to mortgage. And you can use your own agent, but the program itself has someone, a case manager of some sort, that's monitoring all of this. But the cost of the savings have been put aside to cover the condo association and tax. So that the question about if it's someone of lower income, say the AMI is only 50%, then that they could actually afford to pay for the other costs that they would incur. But still paying at 30% of their income towards the mortgage because the city would own it outright. Did you have any feedback on that?
I think that's an important point, and in conversations I've had with Habitat for Humanity, they say on their multifamily projects, because Habitat is all ownership, they often, not often, but they have run into problems with common costs, with a roof repair on a 3-unit, and the folks who are in there are by definition low income. They're in Habitat for Humanity, becomes a problem. So something I would like to point out, and it's always good to be efficient and to think about a program paying for itself, but if we're talking about a common good, something that is needed for the city, I also want to make sure we're saying we don't necessarily have to have it pay for itself. That if the city is owning these units, and we're talking about the city of Boston, it's almost all going to be multifamily of some kind, whether it's a triple decker, whether it's someone mentioned a 10-story building, whatever it is. So there are going to be common costs. It's not going to be just a tax bill, and then in the home there's going to be association, that sort of thing that we have to think about. But the city can give people a big leg up and take a loss, so to speak, and continue doing this, because this is something that hopefully this body, this City Hall, the mayor, will team up on and figure out that this is important. And I do think that affordable home ownership, although, excluding the down payment assistance first-time home buyer programs, which are incredibly effective across the state, particularly in Boston, but is often put to the wayside in the pursuit of the absolute numbers and of how many units we can build and long-term affordability. I think, I said this in my opening comments, and I want to reiterate it. If we're talking about building wealth, generational wealth, I think we have to, folks need a leg up. I think what they call it, the property ladder. I think it's an HGTV show too, but it is a real, I think it's an important concept. And I just want to, I reiterate again, this is not the focus of my organization on whether it's home ownership or rental or not, but it is important. It's something we've come across in our research over and over.
Thank you. Mr. Wu, you have the floor. The liaison.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Councilor Lujan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone for your insightful comments. I want to thank especially Ms. McCory for the work that you're doing at the Home Center. Big fan of Maha and the work that they do with Stash to make affordable homeownership a reality. I worked with them on a number of contracts overseeing that to make sure that our families were getting maximizing the assistance that families were able to get out of the Stash program. And I'm a big fan of, down payment, helping with down payment and closing costs. But obviously, and I think folks have mentioned, like in a market that is so expensive and that has become unreachable for so many of our residents, that isn't going to be enough for the on-ramp to homeownership. So this idea of rent to own could sort of be step in that gap. And I was wondering, you stated that that there's a working group actually that's going to come together on this issue. If you could talk a little bit more about what that working group is and who's a member of it and what it looks like and what you all are thinking about.
I think we just have set up the first meeting, so I don't really have too much information. I know Maha, we invited them to participate. I'm not sure, I think BHA was going to be part of the Mayor's Office of Housing with Councilor Anderson. So it's really in the formation stages, so I don't have really more than that. We were going to take what we hear from this council hearing and try to figure out how we can move forward, exploring different options for the rent-to-own programs.
Great. And we've talked about this a bit, but there are several different models that you could go that you could pursue with rent-to-own. I was wondering if folks had ideas or thoughts about where is the best place if we're investing city dollars. Where is the best place to put the subsidy that from the city? Would that be in land acquisition? Would that be in some sort of the city, backing the mortgages so that we don't have to worry about the credit score, which is often a big impediment, which is rooted in itself in racist practices. So just thinking about if you've given thought to where the subsidy would be the most effective for working class families in the city.
I mean, just as in my opinion, but just because of the cost of properties in the city of Boston, I think the acquisition cost is going to be the biggest place where funding might be needed to purchase the property that would be put out for rent to own. I think that would be the difficulty, and that would be because property values are so high in Boston right now.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a joint question of either that's where the subsidy needs to go, or as we're investigating programs, we need to look at programs that have been creative about how they do acquisitions, just because we have such a big barrier right now in the cost of land and the cost of properties. So I think it's a joint, we need to subsidize that, but we also need to really stress as we're potentially looking for partners or framing our own model, what has gone on in other places or what kinds of research is there about how to get better leverage in a market like ours.
Yeah. I don't know if Joel's.
The one thing I wanted to say is actually just to give my colleagues here a little bit more credit in terms of the acquisition opportunities program and the neighborhood stabilization efforts that the city has been doing with, I think, Jessica and her team, really supporting nonprofit entities in stabilizing properties, which that model is city support, right? Nonprofit ownership, income restricted rental housing, and more recently the BHA has sometimes layered on vouchers to bring down the affordability. So we've tried to do some creative interagency, and then from the anti-displacement side and the affordable rental housing, I think that that's, when it's worked very well. So, I mean, I think that, you know, that's been a very successful model and one that MOH has, I think, done a ton of work on, and that the mayor and council have funded. So there may be others, but I think that that's, I wouldn't want the hearing to pass without appreciating some of that work.
Thank you, Joel, because you predicted my next question. I appreciate that. I was actually going to turn again to you, Ms. Boatwright, and see, because of the Acquisition Opportunity Program, are you seeing any sort of like potential for, you know, how what we do in that space could inform this, you know, rent-to-own discussion? Especially, you know, I think there are a lot of examples of rent-to-own, whether it's, you know, installment options or, you know, lease option where you don't have to buy at the end, or, you know, a lease agreement where upfront it is you are required to purchase at some point. Thinking about what the work that you're doing in the AOP space and how that maybe can inform this discussion. Not sure if you have any.
Well, I think that the biggest learning is just that to compete in this market, we need to be able to move really quickly. And I think what has been really part of what's made AOP successful is that we've been able to move quickly, so that buyers that we support look the same in terms of their ability to compete on the private market, or maybe not exactly the same, but pretty close. And we've done a lot of work both internally in MOH and with administration and finance and other people in City Hall to make sure that can happen. So I think that we know, the good news is we know how to move quickly and be competitive. The program structure is currently more suited to buyers of multifamily, right? Because we're underwriting with the assumption that we're looking at institutional buyers who have history of good management practices and have sound balance sheets, so that we know that they're going to be able to actually execute on the acquisition. I don't think that doesn't, and it hasn't negated the opportunity to talk about homeownership, but I wonder if it's a combination of looking at other ways to do assessments on buyers, right, to figure out who we're supporting, and second, a bit of a staffing question in that, you know, the Boston Home Center has a lot of expertise working one-on-one with individual buyers, and the people on my team have a lot of expertise working with more development entities. And I think that if we could look at a condo kind of model, but I think ultimately we would want to sort of juice up the AOP program with more staff who could work more closely with the eventual buyers to make sure that it was a smooth process. But so I think the main mechanism that we'd be looking at is how we make ourselves competitive, and the part that we have to build out is how do we better support buyers to be successful.
Thank you. And I was just by saying, like, I think that's a great idea, and I think that, you know, especially the work that AOP does for community land trusts could be really great here. Mm-hmm. I think a point of caution in the rent-to-own market is the profit incentive from private companies that do this. And I think working alongside community land trusts that are already doing this work on the rental side with AOP could be a really great model, because we don't want to further damage families that have been damaged by structural barriers. So thank you.
Yeah, and we definitely have some really great relationships in place with community land trusts, so that's in there too, in terms of what's already working in the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that for me, I just have, it's one central, maybe two central questions, because the way that the conversation is going right now, it seems that if there were a rent-to-own model in the city of Boston that would emerge, it would require the city to either purchase land or space, or to some level underwrite the loan and then transfer ownership at some point, or some version of those steps. And I'm curious what barriers, if any, or even if this is a possibility, exist to converting current rental units into ownership units right now.
Sorry, I was looking at Joel, because he's been doing a lot of research on this on the BHA portfolio side. So I'll let you take it. I might have a couple comments after.
I think we always have more quirky regulations than anyone else. So I will say that we have my colleague, Dr. Taylor Kane, is working on heading up a project for BHA, which is looking at some of our state scattered site portfolio. Those are, state public housing rental units. And that is an area where we're looking at can we move those, without losing housing units, create home ownership opportunities, and for the BH, we have maybe 130, 150 units like that in total in the city, so it's a small fraction of the BHA's portfolio. I think that for us, while there's various, I think, things we need to do in terms of the state requires, regardless of whether we would want to go up or down in the total number of units, the state requires us to replace a like unit. So for the BHA's purposes, we're thinking about can we work with those properties and that land and the households that are currently there and to create some home ownership opportunities, and then also fulfill the legal requirements in terms of having comparable rental units. I think probably it's if you're talking about other affordable rental units that are not BHA owned, it's a whole set of other questions. So, and then probably, so I don't know.
Well, I would just add that so we at Mayor's Office of Housing typically don't hold units. So Boston Housing Authority has units. We always partner with developers, and then the developers manage the units, and we monitor them and have ongoing relationships. But because the model is not that we sort of stay in the primary ownership role of the units, I am curious, as I think all of the counselors have mentioned, there is this tension, right, where there are bad actors or actors with not the right motivations who have been involved in this rent-to-own space. But I know Councilor Fernandez-Anderson mentioned Divvy, and we've talked about Trio, and I know that there are some, I've talked to some community development corporations in Boston who've sort of played around with this a lot, and there's probably other thinkers in Boston who are looking at rent-to-own models, and I think it would be helpful to sort of shop a little bit around this idea of sort of who's the first owner, who's the leaseor, and then who does the transfer, and also potentially thinking differently about what we do in a BHA-led model versus what we would do in a Mayor's Office of Housing-led model, or in terms of the, like, who's supplying subsidy, who's holding the property, who's transferring to the eventual buyer. So I just wanted to throw that in because that's a nuance that was probably way too in the weeds and what we need to get in here. But I am really curious to look into some of these other models that have been used around the country and to better understand sort of what's the master buyer or multi-developer buyer model that makes this really work at scale.
And so for the purpose of conversion, it seems like the easiest or most prudent way to do that would be to look at units that are already under the ownership of the city or the BHA or...
I think it's definitely one opportunity we're exploring. It would be interesting to bring the BPDA staff into the room as well, and actually like look at what is the restriction on the deed look like, right? And then and if we make more of those in the future, right, which I'm assuming that's the goal. Would you, if you had it with this kind of intent where something could become an owned unit and it wasn't going one way or the other necessarily, maybe that would be written differently. It's just something that comes to mind. But I think our, we, like as I noted before, the BHA is certainly a property owner and landlord, and we own land. And fundamentally, when we own the land and not the building, it's not really much different from being a land trust. Mm-hmm. That's how we enforce the affordability covenant. So I think entities like that could be brought in as potential partners with public or nonprofit.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think who the partner is and who is running this is critical. I mean, rent to own around this country is rife with abuses. I started my first position out of law school was at Greater Boston Legal Services, working with folks who had been taken advantage of in the subprime mortgage industry, which is a little different, but many of the same players and the same concerns, and something that if it's the city that is owning the property or BHA in partnership with whether it's a community land trust, whether it's some other sort of local nonprofit that is not neither incentivized to do something like this or is not a prior bad actor. I would not want to partner with a national, rent-to-own company or anything along those lines. But, where the city subsidy or assistance could be most impactful would be acquiring the land. And Madam Chair, I want to, push back a little bit on the idea of converting existing affordable rental into home ownership. I think we need to expand as much as we can the supply. I know you agree with that, but I think that's really important. I think there's an opportunity to do that with the city, whether it's acquisition costs. It could even be, as we are entering, it seems like we're entering an economic time that's going to be a little more challenging for housing production, rising interest rates. Certainly we've had the supply chain problems and rising building costs over the last year, 2 or 3 years. I was thinking about, and this is maybe getting a little too in the weeds for this, so I'll just mention it, is, working with local builders in our community, people from our community who maybe can't get the financing unless they say, well, the city of Boston is committed to purchasing X number of units for a rent-to-own program. And, maybe more leveraging that investment to create wealth in the communities. And I'm not talking about with national builders. I'm talking about people who are from our communities, who live there, who employ people in our communities, and who reinvest in our communities, who really could use that hand to say, to go, maybe it's maybe a little larger version of what you're talking about, is the city leveraging that investment to, yes, create these units and create this affordable home ownership program, but also working with builders who are not going to, who can't just call up, Citibank and say, I need another $100 million loan or even a $10 million loan to do this. But if they're in partnership in some way with the city of Boston, that's a way of indirectly, I think, using the city's credit, because I know there are some concerns raised at prior hearings about the city just directly, co-signing home loans. But something to explore, and another way to leverage, while the city has vast resources, they are limited, to leverage that and continue sort of, rippling out.
Yeah, thank you so much. I absolutely agree in terms of not wanting to take more units off of the market, but I think that this hearing is sort of an ideation session for this vision that Councilor Fernandez-Anderson has, and so basically walking down every path and knowing where to say, no, not this one, yes, in this direction, and answering questions about what the limitations are and not, why this and why not that, is going to be incredibly helpful while Councilor Fernandez-Anderson makes decisions about how to move forward with the program. So thank you for answering those questions. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, do you have more questions?
Just a segue, I think, in terms of, and Joel, we had conversations about, what the great work that you guys are doing along with your partner there at BHA and converting already existing units or state-owned units that can be converted into condos. And I think it's all a part of it. I think that, just like sort of other transitional programs they've used scatter sites as temporary situations to transition to another situation. And I think that, these rent-to-own situation would definitely have to be looked at closely in phases to say you are in the phase one of being pre-qualified, you paid your rent on time, you maybe, you have a decent job, you're a single dad of 3, and so you go into this program and you get qualified for it. And obviously the lease is something like 2 to 3 years. It's not short term. And while you're in there, you are in another program, maybe with a revolving fund somewhere, that is helping you to save in already programs in Section 8 or other programs that helps you to save, or maybe it's city supplemented, where you're saving for the down payment, you're also saving for those costs that we're talking about. If the city then says, for example, we're going to buy, there's a program that if you're a builder, we'll buy 5 units from you, and and it's all part of IDP maybe, right? It's part of what you're handing over, but we'll purchase it. We'll help you to be able to build this, but we'll purchase a few of them. I think the phases are then that we're using scatter sites as that temporary move-in or out
so that we are not like doing away with that inventory. So I think it can be a part of it, because where do you put people already in those units when they're needed? And you know, you're gonna need somewhere temporary to put people, right? So why not transition as we're fixing some, building some at renting phase, some at transitioning phase, while a program is managing that. I think it's just really high cost, right? What are we at, like 500,000 per unit maybe? MOH, I don't know, how much does MOH purchase land from BPDA? How, is it like $1 or something? But there's not a lot of land, I know. Did you want to comment?
Oh, well, I mean, we're pushing the 500,000 on the cost to build. I didn't bring with me a cost to buy, although we certainly could. I don't want to, I think I have some numbers in my head, but I don't want to throw the wrong thing out on the record. So, but we can look at that in terms of AOP. When we sell parcels for affordable housing development, if that's what the developer is building, it's $100 a parcel for us. I'm actually not positive what the BPDA price is, but I'm sure we could bring that back to the next conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I think I read somewhere that BPDA can transfer land to MOH for $1. And so looking at parcels from BPDA or, you know, whatever's in existing inventory, I was just thinking in terms of like, as what we're talking about here is owning it outright, obviously, and it's a pilot for a reason, because it's expensive. If we do that and we do that effectively and we explore other means of backing it up financially, I think it's a matter of the logistics that Joel's talking about. Who's managing it? When does it get transferred? You know, and what phases, and how do we design that? And I really appreciate what you said about, you know, national like predators who can take advantage of this. So looking at how the city can really own this and implement this. And I look forward to the, I think Chief Dillon is calling it the round table for rent to own. And she's asked me, she's allowed me to bring collaborators to the table as well. And so I look forward to that. And I wanted to hold this hearing so that we can begin this process, and look forward to working with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Lujan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any additional questions. I just want to thank all of you for all the work that you do in this city to make sure that we are prioritizing that every person has a home, every person has a place to live. And I know that in your individual capacities, you all are doing that. Appreciate the flag again about moving forward judiciously about this to make sure that we are not engaging in anything that will result in predatory or racist practices inflicted on people and folks who have already experienced that in so many structural and real ways every day. And I also thank the maker for just thinking about ways that our communities can realize that on-ramp to homeownership that has often been excluded from so many. So just thank you to the maker, and thank you to everyone for being here.
One more comment? Yes, please. There is a organization, I think, with Nuestra. Maria Lattimore is someone who works for Nuestra, but also has a, I forget the name of the program, I apologize, but a program that she's working on to establish rent to own in this way, where you own it outright and then the mortgage is super low, so it's like rent, basically, or subsidized rent. So I would love to move this forward, whatever the chair wants to do after this, that we get together with the round table, whomever is interested, obviously the chair and Madam Co-Chair, if you guys are interested to being a part of it, and then looking forward to the working session, and I hope that to build momentum with the same people that are here today. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here today, to the administration and to Mr. Zaikum for joining us. At this moment, we're going to be taking public testimony. Again, if you're here with us in the chamber, please sign up on the sheet near the chamber entrance. And for all testimony, please state your name, neighborhood, or affiliation, and try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. And the only name that I have here for public testimony is John Provenzano. Hey, John, how you doing? Good to see you.
There's a mic right here. You can come right up to the front. And please state your name and your neighborhood for the record, John.
John Provenzano, lifelong South Boston resident.
Beautiful. You have the floor, John.
Nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. I'm 100% for what you people are doing, simply because that's where I came from. My parents, basically Italian immigrants, rented for a bunch of years, and then were able to buy a house that was basically boarded up. My dad worked 100 hours a week in a factory. My mom took care of the 5 children. And I'm just giving this history because I believe there's so many good people out there that don't have the money, that if you people get together and keep it, and excuse me if I'm trying to tell you what I'd like to see you do, but to keep it simple, starting off small. A lot of this stuff went over my head because I'm not into the intricate stuff. Without breaking the law, I think the city itself could start a program, without breaking the law, that you're the bank. I'm going to keep it simple. You're the bank. You get the history of people that are renting, that want to buy. You check out their background, you know, first-time home buyer, whatever you're doing with the percentages as to what they have to come down with, put down on the house, and helping them with that to get off that one person, just one person. If you start off simple, without going through all the intricacies of the big companies and contractors and all that stuff, that program, I guarantee you, I'm a product of it, that it could build up from one person to 10 people to 100 people. If that's all it is, in one particular area. Now, I come from South, 2 minutes already?
I'll give you another 30 seconds. Go ahead, John.
I come from that background, and it's easy to progress. It's so easy to progress. I'm going to use the term bridge mortgage, but you people are the bridge mortgage. You're going to help that person get that, go from the rental to the housing, to their own ownership. And by being the bridge mortgage, if they go belly up, you can't lose. It comes back to you. It comes right back to you. You have to start all over again. I failed a couple of times, but then I didn't fail. And it went from one home to another. My parents it's so blue collar, working class, that I remember 11 years old, my mom was embarrassed to bring the $26 up to the bank for the mortgage payment because she was late. I went up, I said, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. She was embarrassed. So I went up and I did it. And when I talked to and the guy was actually kind of laughing at me, but I said, what? My mother said she's late. What's this? Well, she actually has 15 days. As soon as the first of the month was up, she thought right after the first of the month, I'm talking old school, but please just bear it out. This program can work. If I can do anything to help out with sitting on going to anyone's office and give you my ideas. I ended up with 8 pieces of property. I started with nothing. Nothing. It was a down payment that I borrowed the $2,000 to do it. But you don't lose with property. You just don't lose. If somebody goes belly up, there's somebody right there, right behind them. And with you people, with the council, whatever that kitty, I'm going to say the kitty of so much money, that's going to multiply. I guarantee it. If I could just say one more thing, selfishly, and I think you 3 girls have heard it. I know when we went through some of the budget hearings.
Budget hearings, yeah. Where you were here.
You were here. Selfishly, I have 5.
My husband says I look like a girl, too. I look young.
And you told me I looked ugly. No. 5 children, 3 adult children, 2 granddaughters. It goes from third, this is selfishly now, and maybe we can talk about this another time, but I wanted to put this in your head. I don't want any of them to leave the city. 2 are in South Boston, 2 are in Dorchester, and my granddaughter and my 2 other granddaughters, and 1 in Hyde Park. Their real estate taxes, between the 5 of them. Now, my 3 children, all ready to retire, and all the money that we work on with the city, 77% comes from real estate taxes. I didn't go to all the budget meetings, but I don't remember ever talking about giving the homeowners with single families. All 5 of them have just single family, no rentals or whatever. I was the opposite. I went for 3 families and struggled and made it and got another house and blah, 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 and I walked up. I want them to stay here, and the only way they're going to stay here is that the 3, my adults are all getting ready to retire. They're in between 55 and 60, and I'm trying to convince them that they're paying an average of $12,000, $13,000 a year on real estate. In order to get these programs working, you need those people to keep paying and not leave. So I want to ask if there are any committees or however we go to the process, and I was told just not too long ago that through the state, you people can send a program up to them to try to get relief. Any percentage would be good. I know they all get a percentage now because they're home owner occupied. I just want them to get a little bit of relief. Selfishly, I'm putting that 2 cents in.
Thank you so much.
But along with that, I'll work day and night with you guys to get a program going. And my dad told me a long time ago, he worked in a factory since he was 14 years old. God bless him. He said, John, keep it simple. Keep it simple and it's going to be okay. And that's how it happened. That's how it worked for me. My 5 siblings, we all ended up owning a home. And a struggle for all of them. I was doing the same thing. I was at a factory. I was working in a factory. And luckily enough, I went on to work for Eversource, and that's a whole other story. But it's keep it simple.
Thank you so much,
And
Mr.
if I could do
Provenzano.
anything with anyone, thank you for you people. It went over my head because I didn't have any of your printouts so I could read what you have, and then I could ask questions on it, but I didn't have any
Thank you so
printouts
much.
of what
Now,
you
Mr.
guys
Provenzano,
had.
I do not represent you, you're not in my district, but my Chief of Staff, Alex, is right there, and I would like him to get your contact information, and we can talk
Alex.
about the,
Hey, Alex.
we can have a longer conversation about the property taxes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your
And,
testimony.
I went over the bell.
No, yes, and that's
I'm
fine. Thank you.
guilty.
It was just you today, so thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I know.
Thank you to the
Thank you so
administration and to
much.
everybody here. Thank you to the sponsor and to my co-chair for being here today. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.